والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Islam. Islam 101.
Bismillah wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. Welcome once again to a new episode of Islam 101, and I'm your host, Abu Usamah Adh Dhahabi. We have with us our respected panel of students of knowledge and our respected friend and colleague, Nick, who is still interested in the religion of Al-Islam. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide him to this deen. Today, inshallah, we're going to deal with some verses from the book of Allah, the Qur'an. And the Qur'an is the greatest miracle that Muhammad has been given by Allah. The prophets and the messengers of the past, they used to be strengthened by miracles. Jesus had the miracle of medicine, being able to heal the blind, to give life to the dead, to breathe life into the bird, because the people during that time were preoccupied with medicine. So he came with a miracle similar to what his people were known for by Allah's permission, not on his own accord. And similar, Musa, he was dealing with the people, Moses was dealing with the people of Egypt, the Pharaoh of Egypt, who were extremely gifted as it relates to magic. And Moses brought that which was the truth, which defeated the magic. And it seemed to be something similar to magic, but it wasn't magic. It was the truth from Allah. So Allah used to strengthen his prophets and messengers with miracles. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a number of miracles. He pointed to the moon and the moon split, and we believe that. He sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wasallam used to eat, and the food used to make the dhikr of Allah, the tasbih. It used to make the remembrance of Allah, and the people can hear it around him. So he had a number of miracles, but his greatest miracle that is still withstanding today is the miracle of the Qur'an. And the Qur'an is the kalam of Allah. It is the speech of Allah. From him it began. Allah spoke these words. So it is the actual kalam and the actual speech of Allah. And therefore, it is worth our interest, worth our time as Muslims, and other than that, to spend some time with the words of Allah. For verily, the words of Allah will cause the hearts to become tranquil. So we're going to deal with the science that is known as a tafsir, and we're going to deal with some of the interpretation and explanation of the tafsir of a surah of the Qur'an. The surah that we're going to deal with in particular is Surah Al-Sharh. Al-Sharh. That is surah number 94 of the Qur'an, and it is a Meccan surah. So all of the surahs of the Qur'an are divided into either Meccan surahs or Medina surahs. Every surah of the Qur'an is either a Meccan surah or a surah that is from Medina. What is the meaning of a Meccan surah and a Medina surah? The Meccan surah, all of those surahs that were revealed before the hijrah from Mecca to Medina. And the Medina surah are all of those surahs that were revealed after the hijrah. So don't make the common mistake of saying the Meccan surah are the surahs that were revealed in Mecca, and the Medina surahs were revealed in Medina, because there are some surahs that were not revealed in Mecca or in Medina, and yet they're either Meccan or they're Medina surahs. Both the Meccan surahs and the Medina surahs, they have their characteristics. We're not going to get into that in today's class. We'll deal with that at another time. So Surah Al-Sharh is a Meccan surah. It was revealed before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made his hijrah from Mecca to Al-Medina, his migration from Mecca to Al-Medina. And it's one of the smaller surahs of the Qur'an. Small in terms of the size, but it is large in terms of the meaning. And the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "U'titu khamsa, lam yu'tahunna ahadun min qabli." I have been given 5 things that no other prophet was given before me. And from those things he says, "U'titu jawam al-kalam." I've been given the jawami al-kalam, the ability to say something small, but it has far-reaching implications. That is in his actual speech, and obviously if his speech is like that, then what about the Qur'an? So, Surah Al-Inshirah is a smaller surah, but in its meaning and its implication, it is expansive. And that's what it means. If someone were to ask you, Al-Inshirah, what is the meaning of it? It means the expansion of the breast. The expansion of the breast. Allah said in the first ayat, and the word Al-Inshirah comes in the first ayat, Ya Muhammad, didn't we expand for you your breast? That was a favor unto Allah. A favor from Allah unto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that Allah expanded for him his breast. This has two meanings. The expansion of his breast has two meanings, brothers, two meanings. The first meaning, the expansion of the breast, is Allah expanded his breast so that he would be inclined to Islam, and so also that he would be able to deal with his many adversaries, his enemies, and he would still be able to be just with them and merciful to them, even though they were trying to harm him and extinguish the light of Al-Islam. Because whenever you come with Al-Islam or you try to tell people to do right, there are people who are going to stand against you. If you're giving dawah and you're calling for other than Allah, you may get angry and you may fight back. You may push back. But if you're giving dawah to Allah, you're going to be patient. You're going to eat humble pie. You're going to be a person with humility for the sake of Allah. That's if your dawah is for Allah. As Allah Ta'ala said in the Qur'an, قُلْ هَذِي سَبِيلِي أَدْعُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Say to them, Muhammad, this is my way. I call to Allah. I don't call to myself. Jesus didn't call to himself. Allah said in another ayat of the Qur'an, who is better in speech than the one who calls to Allah? So the dawah, the call has to be to Allah. When a person is teaching so that people can know who Allah is, when he sees something from that individual, what he doesn't like, he doesn't take it personal. So Allah Ta'ala is mentioning in this first ayat how he opened Rasulullah's breast, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As he said in another ayat of the Qur'an, anyone who Allah wants to guide, Allah opens his chest to Al-Islam. Allah will open his chest if he wants to guide him. So what happens is, before a person becomes a Muslim, he looks at the Muslims and he says, you have to pray 5 times a day? I don't think that I can wake up early in the morning and pray at that time. I don't think so. The woman says to herself, I see how the Muslims cover their faces and they cover themselves, they cover their bodies, the Muslim woman, and it's hot in places like Egypt and other than that. I don't think that I can never dress like that. She may be in the streets of New York where a person can wear whatever he wants to wear, believe in whatever he wants to believe, and no one's going to look at you a second time. But the person says, if I become a Muslim, they're going to make fun of me. They're going to ridicule me. But if Allah wants to guide that individual, Allah opens his breast to Al-Islam as a favor unto him. So that is the meaning of the first ayat. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Didn't we open your breast and we made it so that you can tolerate your enemies? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calling the people to la ilaha illallah, to worship Allah. He didn't want their money. He didn't want to be a king over them. And yet the people treated him very unkindly. One man in particular by the name of Dhul Khuwaysira, and his children are present today. 1,423 years. His afrah, his baby chicks are present today. Those people who kill people indiscriminately and they blow people up, they're from the baby chicks of this man, Abu Khuwaysira. Anyway, this man, he grabbed Rasulullah by the collar, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he twisted his collar and he said, Ya Muhammad, give me some more money. Give me some more money. You would have thought that Rasulullah would have told one of his companions, kill this man. For someone to take Rasulullah and to manhandle him like that is kufr. For you to take this Qur'an and just to rip the page out or to throw it across the floor is kufr. And look what we find happening now today where Muslims are being imprisoned. People who say that they respect democracy and people's freedoms and civil liberties, they take the Qur'an, the Kalam of Allah, and they flush it down the toilet. For no other reason other than they don't respect our religion. If you accuse a man of doing a crime, that's one thing. That man still has rights. in every society. And this is a holy book that shouldn't be flushed down the toilet or disrespected. Even the Bible, the Muslim cannot take the Bible and throw it down in the toilet, because inside of the Bible are certain things that are the truth. And even though we don't take that book as being the book that is from Allah that should be followed right now, we still can't disrespect someone else's holy book. So where's the democracy? Where's the freedom? Where's the rights of the people? Ala kulli hal. Anyway, as it relates to this first ayat, the first way we understand opening the chest is, didn't we open your chest, Ya Muhammad, and we guided you to Al-Islam, and we also made you a person who can tolerate your enemies? That's the first meaning. The second meaning of this ayat, Alam nashrah laka sadrak, means Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had his chest open 2 times. He had his chest open physically 2 times. Open heart surgery, without anesthesia and without any tools. Why? The Muslim doesn't find that impossible, nor does he find it difficult to believe. The creator of the heavens and the earth, that's easy for him. If he wants to do something, all he says is be, and it becomes. The first time that his chest was open was when he was a young lad of about 5 or 6 years old, and he was in Mecca. He was playing in the desert with some children from Mecca, and a man came, and the man happened to be an angel, but the children didn't know that. The children thought it was a man. They took Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this man, and put him on his back, and then he started to open up his chest. The children saw it and they ran away. They went to the people in Mecca and said, there's a man there, he's killing Muhammad, he's killing him. Rasulullah said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the angel opened up his chest, he took his heart out, and he took from his heart a khayt, a piece of string. And then he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, هَذَا حَظُّ الشَّيْطَانِ مِنْكَ, this is the part of shaitan that was inside of you. And he took it out, and then he washed his chest with the Zamzam water and put it back in the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and sewed his chest back up. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. So that was the first time that his chest was open as a favor to him. What was the favor? The ni'mah, or the favor, was that his heart was washed and the string of shaitan was taken out in preparation for him to leave a hayat tayyiba. He led a life from when he was young, and the people knew him to be a righteous person. As he grew up amongst the people in Mecca, they knew him as Muhammad al-Amin. They didn't know him as Muhammad, a criminal, Muhammad, the one who stole the money. He was Muhammad al-Amin. So we'll come back, inshaAllah ta'ala, in the next segment of this episode to continue the explanation of this verse and the verse that comes after it. And may Allah make it easy for us and easy for you.
Islam 101.
The Prophet ﷺ have informed us that we should not obey no one on the account of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the superiority is to Allah's command. So if the husband tells his wife that I want you to shake hands with my colleagues, with my business partners, no, even if it leads to divorce. If the husband says to his wife that you have to party with me, with partners and so on, no, you have to take your hijab off, no. By any means, communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Definitely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your language, and He will be very happy to answer your dua.
Islam 101.
Welcome back, viewers, Ikhwani Fillah. As we've been mentioning in the first part of today's episode, we've been discussing Surah Ash-Sharh, and we're dealing with the first ayat concerning the opening and the expansion of the breast of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second time that his chest was opened was when he became a prophet and a Nabi in a famous incident known as Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was sleeping in the house of his aunt, Hani, who was in Mecca. And the angel came to him while he was sleeping. And the angel opened his chest and took his heart out and washed it with Zamzam water again. And then his heart was put back into his body. And then he was given a choice, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was given a choice of choosing between milk or khamr. And in another narration, between honey or khamr. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quite naturally chose the milk or the honey, and he left off the khamr. Jibril, who was the angel who came to him, after seeing this choice, he said, salawatullah wassalam alayhi, laqad ikhtarta al-fitra. You have chosen the fitra, ya Muhammad. You chose the milk, which is beneficial. You didn't choose the khamr or the intoxicants, the liquor, the alcohol that goes against the fitra. After that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given an animal by the name of Al-Baraq. Al-Baraq was an animal that we believe in that had the ability to travel at the speed of light. And as we know in this life right now, the fastest means of travel is the speed of light. And Al-Baraq actually traveled that particular speed. So he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rode this animal that was described to us in some authentic hadith. He rode that animal from Mecca to Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. And in Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem, he led the salat in Masjid al-Aqsa, and behind him was all of the prophets and the messengers. Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, every prophet that ever came, Noah, Adam, everyone. They prayed behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why we say that if someone called Abu Hanifa the Imam al-A'zam, we say about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, there's no Imam like Abu Hanifa after Imam Abu Hanifa. But to say he's the Imam al-A'zam is ghulu. It's going overboard. The Imam al-A'zam was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he led the salat in Bayt al-Maqdis as the Imam, and he was the Imam of the Rusul and the Anbiya and the Muttaqeen who were behind him, salawatullah wassalamuhu alayhim ajma'een. After leading the prophets and the messengers in salat, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken by Jibril up to the 7 heavens. On the first heaven, he met another prophet. And the second, he met another one. The third, he met another one. Fourth, another one. And then he went to the 7th heaven. At that point, Jibril said, Ya Muhammad, I have to stop here. No one can go beyond this point except the one who has been invited. And he was one who was invited. And he went the rest of the way, where he had the opportunity to have the ability to speak to Allah directly. And the salat was given to him. There were many issues that happened in the Isra wal Mi'raj. Now is not the time for that discussion. Inshallah, we'll dedicate an episode to that. The point that we want to focus upon is, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Did we not open for you your breast, Ya Muhammad, 2 times? The first time when you were young, in preparation for a nabuwa, in preparation to live a good life, and we took out of you the string of shaitan. And the second time was in this incident, doing the Isra from Mecca to Al-Medina. So anyway, what was the favor of the second opening of the breast? What was the favor? What was the ni'mah of Allah? It was in preparation for that tremendous trip that he was going to take. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken from that point to this point, traveling at the speed of light or even faster. And then he was taken from Bayt al-Maqdis all the way to the 7th heaven, and beyond that to the Sidra al-Muntaha, to the lotus tree, where nothing else can go beyond that point. And that's beyond this heaven that we know. And then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So that type of trip, ikhwani, is going to require some special preparation. We all know, because we've rode in airplanes, we all know, if you ascend into the heavens and you don't take care of the oxygen, then you're going to crush yourself to death. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam traveled without an oxygen tank. There was nothing that was there to help him to deal with the pressure except the quwwah of Allah and the qudra of Allah. And as Muslims, again, we do not have problems in believing these issues as Muslims. We don't have problems believing in these issues. The Nabi of Al-Islam, the Prophet Yunus, Jonah, he was in the belly of the well, and the well went all the way under the sea. Again, the concept of the pressure and crushing the person as he goes down. But this is easy for Allah. All he has to do is say, and it's going to happen. So that was the preparation that Allah Azza wa Jalla gave him in order to handle that particular trip. So that's the tafsir or the explanation of this first ayat of the Qur'an. So as not to lose the audience and not to lose the students here, we're going to stop here, inshallah, in this episode by addressing some of the questions that some of the brothers may have. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now. Nick, you have a question?
Yeah. My question is concerned about tafsir. It's in the interpretation of Quran. I know that some Islamic scientists did interpretation of Quran. Quran is one, and there are few interpretations. How is that?
There's an ayat in the Quran that says, if the Quran was from other than Allah, you will find in the Quran much ikhtilaf, many differences, contradictions. So how is it that the scholars can interpret one ayat and it has multiple interpretations? Like this, Al-Sharh. One interpretation is that it meant Allah put His favor upon you and He guided you to Islam. And He made you able to have a tahammul, to carry and deal with the people and to be tolerant. And then the other tafsir is also that He opened your breasts. Well, this does not conflict with that. They have insijam and they harmonize and there's no problem. So this is true and that's true. In Surah Al-Fatiha, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us to the straight way. Some scholars from the Mufassirin said the Sirat al-Mustaqim is Al-Islam. Some say the Sirat al-Mustaqim is Al-Ikhlas, being sincere. Some say the Sirat al-Mustaqim is Abu Bakr and Umar, the way of Abu Bakr and Umar. Guide us on the way of Abu Bakr and Umar. That's the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Some scholars said the Sirat al-Mustaqim is the way of the companions. If you look at all of those statements, they do not conflict. They harmonize. The Sirat al-Mustaqim is the way of the companions. And it is the middle course. And it is the way of Islam. And it is the way of sincerity. And it is the way of all of the companions. So there's no conflict. So this shows the beauty and the richness of the Qur'an and the richness of the Arabic language, that one ayat or one word can have multiple meanings. You're not going to find those scholars come in and one gives an interpretation, he says it's red, and the other one says it's black. That's a conflict there. It's not going to happen like that. Multiple interpretations that coincide and they harmonize, that shows the richness of the Qur'an and the need that we have as Muslims to acquaint ourselves with the Book of Allah. Even though we are non-Arabic speakers, this is the kalam of Allah. Any more questions?
My question is that, as you said earlier, that Quranic surahs are classified into two, Meccan and Medinan surahs. What is the difference between these two classifications?
That's a good question, Saleh. I didn't see you writing that down, and I was wondering to myself, is Saleh going to miss this point or not? And I was going to ask you, mashallah. Excellent job. As it relates to the surahs being classified as Meccan surahs or Medina surahs, both of them have their peculiar characteristics. And those characteristics took into consideration the condition of those two different periods. The Meccan surahs are surahs that deal with the tawheed of Allah, letting the people know who Allah is and who Allah isn't. When Rasulullah came, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the call of al-Islam to the people of Mecca, they didn't believe in Allah correctly. They didn't believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah. There were people who were proudful about their origin, about their language. So as a result of that, the Qur'an dealt with those issues. Dealt with the issue of who Allah is. Allah is one. He is self-subsistent. He doesn't beget, nor is he begotten. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. All of these ayats were revealed dealing with the condition of the people at that particular time. Similar to that are those ayats and those surahs that begin with the huruf al-muqatta, alif, lam, mim, yasin, taha. These surahs are usually Meccan surahs because when Rasulullah would sit with the kuffar and he would begin to read the Qur'an and he would say to them, alif, lam, mim, it would cause the people to look. This is their language. And then it would cause them to pay attention to what he was reading. And then one of them would say, Wallahi, this is not the kalam or the speech of a human being. So it dealt with those issues, the Meccan period. The Meccan surahs dealt with the issue of Yawm al-Qiyamah, the description of the Jannah and the Nar, because these are things that the people of that time, in that era, they did not believe in them. So these issues were being dealt with to bring the people's attention, to bring them up to speed, to get them to understand these aspects of the religion. Whereas the Medina period, that's the period where the Islamic State was established. Now that there's an Islamic community and an Islamic state in Medina, now there's a need for the legislation of community issues. The issue of the salat, the issue of zakat, the issue of fasting in the month of Ramadan, the issue of how to perform the Hajj correctly, the issue of waging the campaigns of al-jihad, the issue of the distribution of the war booty, the issues that were concerning inheritance, who to marry, who not to marry. So the legislative ayat or verses came down in the Meccan period. So both periods are distinct. And I want to bring this to your attention, and we're going to deal with this a little later, inshallah. From the fiqh of one of the great scholars of al-Islam, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, whenever the Muslims find themselves in a particular time or place, they have to look at their condition. If their condition is similar to the Meccan period, they have to deal with their life according to that period. If their situation is similar to the Medina period, they have power, they have an Islamic state, they should deal with the situation similar to that. And we'll deal with that, inshallah, in more detail when we come back, because it's an important point. And we close out here, sadly to say we have to close out. But we're looking forward to seeing you once again in an upcoming episode. And may Allah give you life and hidayah.
Islam. Islam. Islam.